Welcome back to the Miss English podcast, everyone. I am your host, Sochata, and I am so incredibly happy you could join us today for an episode that I think will change the way you look at your bookshelf forever. We often talk about how reading improves our vocabulary or our grammar, but today we are going deeper. Much deeper. We are exploring what reading actually does to your brain, the physical and emotional transformation that happens between those pages.
It is such a pleasure to be here, Sochata. As someone who has spent decades surrounded by books, I still find it absolutely magical that a series of ink marks on a piece of paper can spark complex electrical storms in our neurons. It is essentially the closest thing we have to real magic or telepathy, isn't it?
It really is. I mean, when you think about it, you are looking at symbols and suddenly you are transported to another century or inside another person's mind. Mr. Saroon, let's start with the basics. What happens in the brain the moment we start reading? Is it like a workout for our gray matter?
Exactly like a workout. In fact, neuroscientists use the term neuroplasticity. When we read, the brain isn't just passive. The somatosensory cortex, which is the part of the brain that responds to physical sensations like movement and touch, actually lights up. If you read a description of a character running, your brain reacts as if you are physically running. It is a full-body experience for your mind.
Amazing! That is mind-blowing. So when I feel my heart racing during a thriller, it's not just my imagination, my brain is actually convinced I'm in danger?
Precisely. Your brain doesn't make a strong distinction between reading about an experience and actually living it. This is why reading is such a powerful tool for empathy. When we read fiction, we are practicing how to be human. We are navigating social situations and emotions from the safety of our armchairs, which strengthens our theory of mind, the ability to understand that others have different beliefs and desires than our own.
I love that phrase, practicing how to be human. It explains why we feel so connected to characters that don't even exist. But what about the cognitive benefits? I've heard that reading can actually help prevent aging in the brain. Is there truth to that?
A tremendous amount of truth. Research shows that engaging in cognitively stimulating activities like reading can slow down the rate of memory decline. It builds what we call cognitive reserve. Think of it as a structural backup system. If one pathway in the brain gets blocked or weakened by age, a well-read brain has so many extra connections that it can just take a different route. It literally keeps you younger, mentally speaking.
Well, that is the best excuse I've ever heard to go buy more books. But let's talk about our modern world, Mr. Saroon. We are all so distracted by our phones and short-form videos. Does reading a short social media post have the same effect as reading a long novel?
Unfortunately, no. There is a huge difference between skimming and deep reading. When we skim social media, we are just looking for keywords. We aren't engaging the parts of the brain responsible for critical thinking or emotional analysis. Deep reading, the kind where you sit for 30 minutes with a single book, requires a level of focus that strengthens our attention spans. It's like the difference between a quick snack and a 5-course nutritional meal.
I definitely feel that difference. After a long day, scrolling on my phone makes me feel more tired, but a book feels like it's washing my brain clean. Is there a scientific reason why reading feels so relaxing?
Yes. A study from the University of Sussex showed that reading for just 6 minutes can reduce stress levels by up to 68%. It works faster and more effectively than listening to music or going for a walk. It lowers your heart rate and eases muscle tension. It's because the brain is invited into a literary world that is governed by its own logic, away from the stressors of our daily lives.
Intriguing. 6 minutes? That is so manageable. Even the busiest person can find 6 minutes. I think many of our listeners struggle with English as a second language, and sometimes reading can feel like a chore because they are constantly looking up words. Does the brain benefit still apply if the reading is difficult?
In some ways, it's even better. When you read in a foreign language, your brain is working twice as hard. You are building new neural pathways for the new vocabulary and different sentence structures. It's a high-intensity interval training for the brain. My advice to your listeners is don't worry about understanding every single word. Focus on the feeling of the story. Let your brain do the heavy lifting of inferring meaning from context. That is where the real growth happens.
That is such good advice. I remember when I started reading English novels, I felt so frustrated. But once I stopped reaching for the dictionary every 10 seconds and just let the story flow, it became a joy. It felt like my brain was expanding.
And it was. You were literally growing your white matter. The communication between the different lobes of your brain becomes faster and more efficient the more you read. It's like upgrading your brain's internal internet from a slow dial-up to high-speed fiber optics.
I love that analogy. Before we wrap up, Mr. Saroon, do you have any tips for our listeners on how to make reading a habit, especially for those who feel they've lost their love for it?
Start small. Don't feel pressure to read a 500-page classic. Pick something you are genuinely curious about, even if it is a comic book or a short story. Make it a ritual. Maybe it is with your morning coffee or right before bed. And most importantly, remember that every page you turn is a gift you are giving to your future self. You are building a more empathetic, sharper, and calmer version of you.
That is so beautiful. Mr. Saroon, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us today. I feel inspired to go home and finish the book on my nightstand right now.
My pleasure, Suchata. Happy reading to everyone listening.
And to all our listeners, thank you for tuning in to the Miss English podcast. Remember, your brain is a garden, and books are the water and sunlight it needs to bloom. Until next time, keep reading, keep learning, and keep being wonderful. Goodbye for now.